Welcome to our latest Three Takes on AI podcast. We share different takes on who's responsible for the response to your prompt, how organizations and people to look at and be responsible when AI does make a mistake. Listen and then share your take with us. Today's talk on Three Takes on AI is something personal, and that is what happens when AI goes wrong? Is there a personal responsibility? Is it an organization for the business? How do we go about negotiating and deciding as we move into an AI world where it takes action and does things for us and for our organizations? Who has the responsibility? And this really starts out with Mike. So I'm going to let him kick this off and talk about it a little bit. He sent an email to Campbell and I that talked about this and really sparked this idea. So I'm going to let him kick it off and then we will each have our own opinions, I'm sure.
Great. Always good to be the sacrificial lamb here. So I'll take it. So the genesis of this was a friend of mine, Sheila, who shared an email that she had written that she wants to get to the CEO of Anthropic, and it was around sovereignty of data and sovereignty of AI. So what happens when AI is making decisions that have real impact? How do we understand and know as individuals how and where that decision came from? And by the way, this absolutely cascades into the business world when when we empower AI to make decisions for us and for our business that can have catastrophic outcomes. And one of the examples that she used was when AI makes a decision on coverage for a patient or care for a patient based on the insurance that they have, which is a real thing. So who should be responsible for that, and how much should the patient be able to find out about how that decision came about? And should the data be portable? Should it be editable by the patient or the consumer? So that's the genesis, and we can
And
spawn from that. So
my take on this is very simple on the personal side, and that is this is a education and a human problem, not an AI problem. And that is humans need to be well educated to understand that AI can make mistakes, what the potential is, and truthfully, the responsibility in the end is on the human themselves. And so my issue with what Sheila seems to want to happen is to add something in the middle, a container or something in the middle that stops at the prompt level, looks at how it's going to be processed, and comes back to the user with if there are any issues or whatever there may be. And I don't think that's the right answer on the personal level. I think that introduces friction. I also think in a country that at least originally was founded on free speech, you have to allow freedom in the human, and the way to minimize the negative impact is to educate the humans as to what's really going on. I don't think we've talked about it now, I think at least on two podcasts. This really does come down to the human and taking responsibility, and I think that's where I sit on this topic.
Yeah. Okay. So, um, being the Canadian in the room, my view,
don't brag.
well, not in hockey anyway. Um, my view is that there are certain initial baby steps that have been taken today around the globe to do this. I think the legal precedent right now is that AI does not have contractual and legal bounds to maintain its own level of sovereignty or decision-making capability. That still relies on the humans. Now, if you look at the current supply chain of AI, whether it's Anthropic and others, they are very good as AI vendors of developing this software. Some of them will tell you where the data, where the model was trained on, how it was trained, but they will indemnify themselves or legally they will sort of distance themselves from that fundamental decision that's made within that environment. Pardon me, I'm fighting a cold here. Um, so the fact is that the vendors are going to try to sell their technology into an environment to do potentially automated decision making. We know that the EU AI Act is very strong in sort of, identifying risk factors associated with where those decisions are going to be made, and then, what the potential legal outcomes are for them, or whether the system can actually run within the European market at all, like biometrics, facial scanning. But I think the um, the key thing here is that um, we're still in an initial phase. I said this on the last podcast. We as humans developed this technology. AI didn't develop itself. We suffer from AI exceptionalism and AI anthropomorphizing, assuming that we're putting a human individual into that sort of mix, but we're not. I mean, there was a decision made through a process that an individual either gets health insurance, or they get declined, or they get a job, or they don't get a job. There needs to be mechanisms, and there are governance frameworks in place. There are laws in place today that hopefully, to a certain degree, in certain jurisdictions around the globe, an individual can find out why that decision was made, how it was made. Now, that's a very small portion. The bulk of what's out there right now is that if an automated decision making is made in AI, then you're out of luck to understand the transparency and everything associated with it. The I am going to hook into here about the Anthropic and the DoD, because I know we've been talking about that as well. But again, if you look at it as, who decides the ethical boundaries of, AI in warfare, as an extreme example, right? The companies that build it, the governments that deploy it, or an independent body. And right now, that, from what I see, is currently being decided through contract negotiations, which is a scary fact, that each contract negotiation is going to dictate potentially how a decision is going to be made and the outcome. I saw someone's interesting post on LinkedIn. They said, when you're a lawyer, you have a license. When you're a doctor, you have a license. When you go fishing, you have a license. So why don't we incorporate or enforce licenses onto AI utilization and models, so that they have to go through a vetting process to meet that license to be able to operate. So therefore, it's stamped at the bottom of the web page. This AI model is licensed to give you a proper decision and or explain the outcome. Those are some
Which is
thoughts.
great. So it's almost like an ISO or SOC compliance type level of certification for AI, which I think that's a wonderful idea. It will take years to get there. And in the meantime,
Yeah.
we're faced with the challenge today. So, Brian, I think we're, more in agreement than not. I have a different feeling on kind of where we are. So one is you guys have known me for a long time. I'm big on accountability. I think that AI allows businesses to skirt accountability, right? So in the past, when we have a problem as consumers, you get on the phone and you call the call center and you ask for a supervisor and the supervisor, and eventually you get to a human who has made or can make a decision to change the outcome. We are moving away from that with AI, right? And you get into now you've got issues of access, right? So who made the decision? Well, AI made the decision. Well, who programmed the AI? Who the hell knows who programmed the AI? Who put in the prompt? Who changed the prompt? So there's like one of the folks that I'm talking to outside of my I don't know how to put it, maybe somewhat consulting, mentoring, whatever, is now thinking about building an agent that looks at the program to say, well, who actually programmed the agent to do what it did? And did the agent do what it was supposed to do? Or did it create another set of issues? By the way, there can be positive outcomes as well. And then the other part of that, and Brian, this goes back to yeah, the point of humans. There's an education component that's missing, right? The humans, by and large, do not understand AI. They don't understand prompts. They don't understand agentic AI. They don't understand any of it. They are the recipient of the outcome. And because they are the recipient of the outcome, it is my opinion that it is incumbent on the corporate side to be more diligent about how the agents and how the AI is programmed to behave. Because
I think
otherwise,
we have, I'm sorry.
otherwise you have unintended outcomes, and many of them are really bad.
I think there are two aspects to that discussion. The first is if the corporation is providing a response, like are you insured? That's definitely on the corporate side,
Yeah.
and that's where it should be. If it's on the person who's engaging in Chat GPT and asking it, about a relationship or some kind of personal interaction, that becomes, I think that is on the human side, and that education needs to occur. I think the other challenge in this case is that the decision about AI making whether you should be insured or not probably is not a generative AI solution. It should be a predictive one and much more confidence driven. And I think we don't do enough of that talking. We generalize AI to really come back to a prompt and a model when that's not the case. And I hate to circle back on the Anthropic thing. The reason that I can't give Anthropic, even though I said at the end of the year one of my top picks was Anthropic because seemed to have they were being honest about what was going on in the world. Um, Peter Thiel, is a major investor in Palantir, is an original investor in Anthropic. He's a major investor in OpenAI. So to say that Anthropic is the model of being ethical in this case, they certainly didn't. You get in bed with Palantir, you have to decide how ethical you really are. By the way, their first investor was the CIA. So it's really hard with all these companies investing in one another to tag one as better than the other, I'm afraid.
Yeah,
I,
no,
I completely agree.
again, let me just jump in quickly because Mike, you raised the point, and then Brian, you sort of like hit on it. It all fundamentally comes down to the umbrella of what I've been talking with clients about AI assurance. AI assurance includes governance, it includes ethical practices, it includes either guardrails, hard guardrails, or what we now see at the DoD, rumble strips. So at least like there's a little warning that you're going outside of the bounds of it. But the key factor in anything is that it's not. I reflected on the license analogy, like getting a license. But each organization is going to have competing factors that they have to account for. And that covers the spectrum of from military operations all the way over to academic research. And if you look at that spectrum, not one approach is going to fit every organization. Not one standard is going to fit every organization. You have to balance jurisdiction. Where does this organization sit? Are they sitting in the US? Are they in Colorado? Are they in healthcare, et cetera, et cetera? What is their risk tolerance? We deal with sensitive information. Our risk tolerance is extremely low. We're retail, we're out there, we're trying to sell stuff. So our risk tolerance is, really high. Fundamentally, what is the budget that organizations are going to spend on this stuff? Are they going to go to a SaaS implementation? Are they going to, scarily enough, try to deploy OpenClaw and try to do it themselves? But there's all of these factors, competing factors that come together for one organization to put it in place. And I truly believe that it's what was originally called, privacy by design. You have to do AI by design in that it is a systems approach to how you actually implement it within an organization so that you accommodate, multidisciplinary teams to define and create that sort of outcome that you don't get into trouble and you don't violate any laws or you don't put people at risk, you don't discriminate, et cetera, et cetera. So there's it. I think the fundamental and simplistic answer is that it depends based on these competing, factors within a specific jurisdiction for an organization. Anyway, maybe I'm overgeneralizing.
Great point. And I know we're going to run out of time here. And I think it's a bigger conversation because it is in some cases literal life and death decisions, and in other cases it's what happens in the business. We see business after business after business. Oracle over the weekend announced they're going to lay off thousands of people now because of AI in their data centers and. Well, with that means that we're empowering the AI to make decisions that humans would have made. So now what happens when the AI makes a decision that disagrees philosophically, culturally with your business, has a financial impact on the business? You lose a customer, you overcharge or undercharge a customer, what have you. You miss buying signals. There are myriad things that can happen here, but we can't just accept that that's what the AI engine did, because somewhere in that process are humans, and humans have to still be accountable for what the AI does.
Correct.
So it's interesting because I wrote a post on LinkedIn just off the cuff about the new reality of governance, right? And I think what this really comes down to is a business decision, not an IT one. And that is the business has to make a decision about what it's in business for, what the overall strategy is, and how AI will impact that. And impact, instead of governance being sort of relegated, I think traditionally in IT into compliance, it really becomes the heartbeat of how AI interacts and enables business and capabilities, and including making sure that it doesn't go rogue, that they build in the right cybersecurity strategy. And one of the things that's caught me is that I hate to go technical really, but this does open up an opportunity in the middleware space to provide that insulation, that interaction layer between AI and traditional systems that are actually still running the business so that it can stop bad behavior and enable good behavior. And
Yeah.
so I do think it comes down to a business and a human decision, whether it's human, whether it's on the personal or the business side. And if we don't, we, to your point, Mike, if we give those decisions away to AI, that doesn't mean we're still not responsible for the result.
Well, way to put a bow on it.
Yeah, and I'm still trying to figure out why I got 1,100 impressions on a post that I just didn't think anything of. But I think it's some, and what I was suggesting, and then we still have 3 or 4 minutes, by the way, um, was that cybersecurity now needs to be part of governance and not the other way around. That you can't. My example was you could have um, an agent say not approve a treatment, and it does it because it went rogue. And all cybersecurity would say was the agent had the identity, the access, and the privilege to do it. And probably, whereas governance should, or something should be stepping in the middle and going, this is not how it
I
should be
think,
operating.
Brian, I think you and Campbell combined, I think, have kind of, to me, are putting the fine point on this. And that is, similar, like we went through the bring your own device and bring your own application and the governance associated with that and just putting the rules in place and in. The same thing needs to happen with AI. It's one thing for you to use AI at the desktop level, if you will, to help you write an email to a customer or something. But there needs to be in a business a board, if you will, that includes finance, the business, security, etc. Anytime you're building process for the AI to do, so that there are different functions in the organization looking at it and saying, what's the outcome we want, and what are the things that can happen here, good and bad, and that board, BOARD, is now responsible for the outcome. So because Campbell, I'm thinking like, if we were to require, licensing, at least here in the United States, oh my gosh, we'll be talking about it still in 5 years because we're going to fight over that. Versus, no, it's like there needs to be a board.
Well,
And
I mean,
that,
part of what's happened in this country over time was that the boards get legally responsible when things go bad, right?
yeah,
And if
yep,
that was true here as well, you would get that governance and that standardization much quicker, if you will. But I think the reality of this, and I do want to say one more thing, and that is, if Sheila is listening, I don't think friction for everybody is a good idea. But if that tool were to turn to be a protector for children who are using I think that would be that's a place where it does belong.
I'm sure Sheila will listen.
Anyway, so any other final thoughts?
I still think it's up to the humans to prevent the rise of the machines.
And accept what the machine results are human owned. Even if it's
Ultimately,
all
yeah,
automated, you're never going to get a vendor. The liability is going to be at the business level, it's going to be at the human level who chose it, and that's where it's going to be unless something changes drastically
Yeah.
there's
before
the
I
ultimate
retire.
philosophical and where philosophical and sci-fi meet. The rise of the machines are the machines actually just doing what it is that humans wanted them to do in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I'll just add one last thing. Currently, the way that we're functioning, to your point, humans built the system to make a decision. Humans need to be responsible for that decision. Humans need to explain it. However, currently, a lot of companies are basically throwing their hands up and saying, "Hey, it was a black box. I can't explain it." And so that's this gray area that needs to be resolved. There needs to be greater transparency and accountability. So if people listening to this podcast are out there and you're looking to make a decision on an AI technology, make sure contractually that you have the means to get an explanation and transparency on how the model was trained, what it was trained on, and what are the ramifications for when things go bad.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Another great podcast, and everybody will be seeing you all in 2 weeks.
Yeah, thank you.